excited for you all to join us today for our farmer researcher collaboration session. This will be a panel discussion. Today is a quick, wonderful hour we have together. This is just a quick overview of what we're going to do. I will start with a quick introduction of our speakers and of this webinar project, the Seeds of Success. The speakers are then going to get a chance to introduce themselves, share a little about themselves, and then we'll dive right in to our panel questions. So if you do have any questions for our speakers today, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We really are anxious to hear what your questions are and get some great answers from our speakers. First, I want to take a minute to just thank our funders and who's a part. This webinar series, Seeds of Success, is funded through the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. Most of you know them as NIFA. This has been a really wonderful partnership that the Organic Farming Research Foundation and NIFA has had to bring together farmers and researchers and really have a chance to connect and dig into how we can have better farm research where the farmers feel like they're a partner and the researchers feel like they're really doing something to help this production system. So we're really grateful to them and this component of a 3-year agreement we've had with them.
Mary, if I interject for just one moment, sorry.
Yes.
I think the attendees are not able to enter anything in the chat right now. Is there a way to check on that?
Absolutely. 1 second. Thank you. Absolutely interject that.
There's also the Q&A button if folks want to enter questions through the Q&A, but we do want people who are attending this webinar to introduce themselves in the chat once we get it enabled again.
Yes, please. I apologize. That should have been. Thelma, since I'm going to be speaking, would it be possible that you would try to do that as a co-host on the back end?
I am working on it.
Thank you. Let me see if I can do that through participants. 1 second. Yeah, if you could, or if Ashley's on the line, if she's able to do that, I apologize. I thought that setting was already there.
Yes, Ashley, if you are on, if you could please just sign out and try to reset it through the Zoom login because I don't have that Zoom login. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We appreciate the patience.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to introduce this a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is I'll kind of hop off while our speakers are introducing themselves, and I'll hop in there if we haven't been able to fix it by then. So thanks everybody for your patience. But first, I'm so excited about this panel. My name is Mary Hathaway. I am the Research and Education Program Manager for the Organic Farming Research Foundation, and it's my true pleasure to get to host this event. We'll be joined today by 4 really awesome speakers, people with great experience and even better attitudes. First is joining us is Meg Moynihan Stuedemann, who is the owner of Derrydale Farms. She was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin and Nashville, Tennessee, and earned her bachelor's from Brown's. She was captivated by agriculture while serving with the Peace Corps in Thailand. And after returning to the US, she earned a master's in agronomy at the University of Minnesota. She is now a dab hand at milking cows, driving tractors, fixing fence, and repairing water lines, and of course, organic paperwork. We also have farmer Liz Graznak, who established Happy Hollow Farms in 2010, which is nestled among the rolling hills along the Missouri River. The farm is USDA certified organic and Real Organic Project certified. So Happy Hollow Farms has expanded to nearly 16 acres of veggies, fruits, eggs, and ornamental cut flowers that Liz sells to the CSA, year-round at the Columbia Farmers Market, and to a number of local restaurants and grocery stores. In 2021, Liz was recognized as the Organic Farmer of the Year by Marble Seed. Amazing. And with us as well is Mary Hendrickson, who is a professor of sustainable food systems at the University of Missouri. As director of the Interdisciplinary Center for Food Security, she is committed to research and teaching that can build resilient, food-secure communities across Missouri and beyond. Mary also enjoys engaging learners inside the classroom and outside. In 2020, she was a Fulbright Scholar to Iceland and has received several teaching and extension awards. Actually, she's joining us from Iceland today, so thank you for making that very long telecommute. And last but certainly not least, we have Kerry Clark, who is an associate research professor at the University of Missouri. She conducted research in soil health and organic production for several years and now focuses on cover crop development. We're really excited to hear from them. And before we get to their presentations, I'm just going to share a little bit more about OFRF and who is bringing you this panel discussion. So my organization, the Organic Farming Research Foundation, is a national nonprofit founded in 1990. We work to advance organic agriculture through scientific research. And as a champion of organic farmers across the United States, we work to foster the improvement and widespread adoption of organic farming systems. So we really appreciate you being here. This kind of webinar is really core to our mission. We do our work in threefold ways. So our key areas are research, which is really our foundation. From the beginning, OFRF has worked to ensure that there's funding for organic research that advances scientific knowledge and really improves the practices and prosperity involved with organic farming. Another piece is providing educational resources. We work really hard to make sure that all this awesome cutting edge organic research is available in applicable and really actionable resources for farmers. These resources are things like guidebooks, online courses, fact sheets, webinars like these, and so much more. I really encourage you to check out our website. We have a ton of educational materials that are online and available for free. And our third core area is advocating for federal programs and policies that support the unique needs of organic agriculture and really working to make sure that the voices of organic farmers and ranchers are heard in Washington, D.C. OFRF has been instrumental in securing federal funding for policies and programs that support organic farmers. And just a few other things, we are a real science-based organization, but we also have a lot of impact. And we're also expanding. So one of our newest programs is the Farmer-Led Trials Program, which provides technical support for farmers who want to trial some of their ideas, their production challenges on their farm. We're really excited about this one. I encourage you to read. We've got a few blogs from our first cohort, and our second group of farmers is just about to go through this program starting in February. We'll have a whole new group. I'm also really excited to share we're coming out with an organic research hub. It should be coming out in March of this year. And so this is an online centralized content hub that'll have like research summaries, technical resources for organic farmers, or aggregated science-based resources that'll be really easy to search on our site. And so I encourage you to take a look for this. It's coming soon. It's going to be a really great one-stop shop. And lastly, I just want to say we are a small and mighty team, but we do a ton of stuff and we always put it out there for people to use. I encourage you to check out some of our resources and see some of the things we're doing. We're really trying to make an impact and expand the capacity of farmers through all this wonderful research that's being done with our partner researchers. And with that, I would love to hear a quick introduction from our presenters. So each of our presenters is going to have a little chance to just share a few minutes about their background on their farm or their research and what kind of research they've already engaged in. And I hope this will give us a chance to kind of get to know them a little better before we go into our panel. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Meg, if you want to give us just a few minutes introduction to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. I am delighted to be here today. I love to do anything with OFRF. I go back a long way with the organization. I was on the board for a couple of terms and I was even the chair at one point. And so it's great to continue to be involved because I believe strongly in the two-headed mission of OFRF. So I am about an hour southwest of Minneapolis, St. Paul in Minnesota, where it's -2. It's up to -2 now. And I farm with my husband. We have an organic dairy and we milk about 60 cows. Our milk goes to Organic Valley. So nationwide, you should, I hope you're seeing our branding here and there. My husband started this dairy. Actually, he started the farm in 1988, the dairy in 1994. And I didn't join until we got married in 2012. And my background, as you heard in the bio, was I was a very urban person until I went off to the Peace Corps, and it changed my life as it changes so many lives. In addition to dairying with my husband, Kevin, I work part-time for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And for many years, I was known as the organic lady in Minnesota. I have handed that program off to somebody else, and I now work on other projects and programs. And I'm here today as a dairy farmer, but wanted you to know that I have that background as well. We have done quite a lot, I think a lot of work in conjunction with organic researchers, and I've interacted with PIs and graduate students and undergraduates, and find it really interesting and stimulating to be involved. And so I'm looking forward to talking about that today.
Thank you. Perfect. We appreciate that introduction. And Liz, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you. I'm also super excited to be here today. I am starting my 15th year farming here at Happy Hollow. And over the years, I have also worked with a number of professors and researchers, both at Lincoln University and at the University of Missouri, on many, many different projects, soil projects, projects looking at different cucurbits and trap cropping. I'm currently participating in a research project with peppers with a graduate student at the University of Missouri. With a couple years ago, I worked on a sweet potato research project. So I've done a fair bit of, as much as I can while farming. Worked with mostly with either graduate students or research professors. But then I've also worked in conjunction with Mary Hendrickson pretty much over the last 15 years in numerous different ways, talking to students in her classes. She's brought her classes out to the farm for farm tours. We've done a lot of work together, mostly with, the students at the university. So that's what I've been up to.
Thanks, Liz. We'll shift it over to Mary Hendrickson. A brief introduction would be great.
Hi, folks. Thanks for having me here today. And it's great to be with all of you. And Liz and I do go back a long, long way on sustainable ag, food systems, organic work. I'm completing a project right now in research and extension around understanding barriers to organic production in what I say the Mid-South, Southern Missouri and Northern Arkansas and areas around it. But I started my career in extension as a state specialist on local food systems for the University of Missouri. And because of that, I've spent a lot of time on farms with folks. I'm a regular shopper at the Columbia Farmers Market, often am shopping at Liz's stall. She's got the nicest one in the market. And it's I think it's that regular interaction that's been really helpful to being able to ask Liz, can I bring my students out? But then also one time Liz is like, I just need to know somebody at the university who does X. And, so being able to help facilitate some of those connections, I think has been probably what I do a lot, given my extension background.
That was when I was on the board of the NOP, and I needed to talk to some people that knew more about bovine farming than I do.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And last but not least, let's hear from you, Kerry.
Hello, and thank you for having me here today. So I am a crop scientist. I was formerly a soybean breeder for many years, and then went into organic research as I transitioned into soils research. So I focused largely on, in the beginning of our research in organic production, grain crop production here, we looked at organic no-till. And then also I worked on different types of weed control, and I've kind of focused on developing new mechanical weed control. So we had a between row mower that we developed here. I also worked, and please don't ask me for the plans because it didn't work well, but we developed an edamame harvester. But the between row mower, we got out to a few farmers to try out. And I think after that, the weed zapper came out and they moved more into the weed zapper. But I still work with small equipment and small farmers, but I do it in Africa mostly. I'm also working on the National Cover Crop Variety development, and we're trying to develop cover crop varieties that are acclimated to certain environments across the U.S. and then commercializing the new varieties.
Awesome. What a great introduction to everyone. And I think this sets us up now. I think we can move on to our panel discussion. We have a few questions kind of to introduce and give kind of a broader picture, but for those of you on joining us, please add your questions into the chat. We will try to get to as many as we can. We've got plenty of time to get these questions answered. But first, I think I'll start with one for everybody, and speakers feel free to just kind of popcorn in. I would love to know, for you farmers, how did you cultivate your relationship with a researcher? And for you researchers, how did you cultivate your relationship with the farmers? And Kerry, just because you just spoke, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
So when I was a soybean breeder, we had on-farm research, but it was basically us just using, like we had certain variety trials we want to do, and we just had, we used the farmer's land. It became a little more difficult when I tried to do organic research because we always wanted to integrate into what people are doing. And so to locate them, we usually used just, networking at the Missouri Organic Association meetings. But trying to integrate into your research into somebody's production can be kind of difficult. And so if people are interested in doing on-farm research with researchers, there's give and take on both sides. So you may have to do something that's not part of your organic or not part of your production plan to fit them in. And then they've got to, of course, follow all of your planning that you've done as far as, keeping your farm organic and that kind of thing. But to me, probably the most challenging part of organic research was trying to work together on that on-farm research so that nobody was too inconvenienced and everybody maintained their enthusiasm for the research.
I'll say I think Kerry's really onto something there from the farmer perspective of finding kind of that sweet spot and that balance, because we are not, as farmers, we have a view sometimes just into a little piece of what is going on, what the part of the larger research project is, and we are trying to balance the day-to-day production, the day-to-day crises. And when it comes down to it, our farm is always going to come before the research project is. That's just the way it is. That's a survival reflex. So we do all we can to accommodate the needs of the researchers, but you can't count on us to be like a technician necessarily, unless that's really explicit in the planning of the project. And so I think as clear as each side can be about what they need and what they can do and provide, so that there's really clear agreement, I think that results in a better outcome for everybody. And for our purposes, when we have more in-person involvement from the research team, that is a big help here. So if the PI comes down, if a graduate student can be here, an undergraduate, a technician, somebody, particularly when data collection is going on, I feel a lot better about that than just sort of trusting that by the skin of our teeth, my husband and I will get that done in the way it really needs to be done to protect the integrity of the research project. And if I could, since I'm blabbing on again, I'll go back to your question, Mary, which was about how the formation of those relationships. I think that we are invited to participate partly because we're so close to the Twin Cities. We're fairly convenient, and we're about an hour away. And so it's convenient to go out. And so if a researcher needs an organic farm, sometimes that's dairy. We did a really fun project with a walk-through fly trap with one of our dairy production researchers. And that was fun because we could see what was happening. It was set up there. Cows walk through. Did they have fewer flies on them after they walk through this fly trap as opposed to before? But we've also had students come out and do bird counts. which wasn't directly related to the dairy, but the fact that we have so much pasture, and they were looking at nesting species, and they just needed an organic farm to compare with some other farms that they were looking at. So I think some of it is proximity, and I think some of it is just being in getting to know the organic community and becoming known and meeting other people and having your name passed around. And so sometimes, if two faculty members might be talking to each other and they would say, well, actually, I did some work with these people, the Stuedemanns, and I bet you could call them, and they might be, interested in looking at the soil health project or doing worm counts or something like that.
I was actually just going to say that, Meg, that I think there's some really important steps to building the relationship with farmers. First of all, like, you have to build some sort of trusting relationship with farmers. So yes, it's proximity, but you're not going to work with a researcher who is like, oh, get me this data right now. So you have to build some sort of reciprocal trusting relationship. And I think that Liz and I have had that over time, because I was an extension and I often was the person that farmers asked for information for, can you find this out for me? Or can you connect me with this person, or so on. And so I had the ability, both Kerry and I had the ability, because we'd worked so much in agriculture in our state, we had the ability to be a known quantity. And I think that is really important to helping build the relationship. And I also think it's very important for researchers to understand, as Meg just said, the farm comes first. And I can't, like, if I'm taking a group of students out and there's been a major disaster, Liz is going to tell me, don't come, right? And I just have to do that, because that's the farm. It comes first. Or if if I'm going to have Liz do something with me, like a farm tour or something like that, I try to make sure that I have at least a modest honorarium or something that I can build in. And so I would say for researchers, like, I'm on the administrative council for the USDA's North Central Sustainable Ag Research and Education. And it's very important when we have researchers apply, that they understand that the farmers have to have benefit from the research, but also if they're going to be doing stuff and being involved, they need to be rewarded for being involved in that. That can't be just gratis time. So I think that trust is really important, and really understanding the incentives and the ability to work together.
Liz, would you like to add anything? This has already been a great discussion.
Just that, over time, when I very first started participating many years ago in some on-farm research, I was naive, and it didn't occur to me that, I should be asking for some kind of honorarium or some kind of payment for my time. And it is very important that the researchers make sure that they write that into their grants, because our time is very valuable, and we do deserve to be compensated in some way for our time and our knowledge. And the farm will always come first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And this kind of is aside to that, but kind of leading into the farm always coming first. I'm wondering, for our researchers, for Mary and Kerry, to what extent are farmers involved in the generation of research ideas?
Well, it depends on the project, but for me, every good research idea I've ever had has come from me being in community and working with farmers, right? And so even this last one that I have, this organic grant, was Kerry and I working with one of her collaborators from the last organic grant, and us kind of chatting about, like, what are Do you think it's more that we just have crappy soil in Missouri? Although Liz has good soil, by the way. Or is it because we just don't have markets or how? And so, we kind of really talked with farmers about it as well, but most of it came from our experience being out in the field with farmers. So I think that that's really important, but that didn't mean that the farmers were actually involved in putting the grant together in that case. But in other cases, farmers are key, like, help do some writing and so on the grant. But I would say almost every good idea I've ever had has come with farmers, right? So it's not my idea, really.
Yeah, so just to give you a little idea of what the process is, like Mary said, we're usually getting the general ideas from, we would go to the organic farmers meetings, listen to their concerns and think, okay, well, we could do, maybe this might be a solution to that problem. Let's do some research. Then the process is that you have to wait for a request for proposals to come out from NIFA, org, or OREI programs. That comes out, the researcher then has to write a proposal. And normally these have very like regimented procedures that we have to do, and we have to stick with those. So when things kind of go wrong later, you still have to kind of try to stick to what you originally said you were going to do. And then about they give you maybe 3 months to write the proposal, and then maybe 6 months later you find out if you got it or not. And so sometimes you don't get it and you try again. So maybe you go back to the farmers, talk to them a little bit more, see if there's some adjustments you can make that will make the grant proposal more attractive. And then when you do get it, then it's time to start. And it's usually on a 3 to 4 year time period. And that can be kind of difficult, like if crop rotations are involved or that kind of thing. But so it's great if you can find somebody that's doing something similar to what the proposal is on, because the people who you actually do the on-farm research with may not have been the people you were talking with when you designed the research. And so trying to make those two things fit together is kind of challenging. And I will agree with Liz that I've never done on-farm research without paying somebody. So it is a lot of your time. And as Meg said earlier, you're not our technicians. But if there is some expectation that you would contribute, like maybe you're going to plant or harvest or something, that we would increase the pay to meet the expectations. And as farmers who are going to be doing that kind of thing, you need to make sure that the compensation you're given is commensurate with what they want you to do. If sometimes it's just providing land and the farmer doesn't do anything, sometimes the farmer's involved, they plant, they harvest, they do weed control. So you need to be adequately compensated for that. But if you do decide, if as a farmer you decide to do collaborative research with a researcher, do make sure that the research will fit into your farming system. So like I wouldn't go to Liz's and do grain crops because Liz is a vegetable grower. Yeah, so make sure that it's going to fit and that you think it can be a success. But we really, really do appreciate when farmers will collaborate with us, because we can't get the grants to do the research without farmer collaboration. And it's sometimes, maybe it doesn't go so well. Don't feel bad if it doesn't. I had a grazing collaboration once with a farmer, and his cows kept breaking down the fence, and they messed up everything. And it just sometimes things just don't work out. But don't feel bad, and keep trying if you want to continue to do collaborations in research. And also another thing is that you would hope that the data would give you some benefit. Like I know Liz did some trap cropping, things like that. Hopefully the researcher shared the results with her, and she was able to use that research in her own farm and integrate the knowledge she learned by being an on-farm collaborator.
Kerry, that is one of my biggest frustrations, is not finding out the bigger picture that my farm or my work or my participation contributed to, because I don't think I have ever worked with a researcher who has sent me the final paper or has sent me an extension publication and said, this was what you were involved in. And that actually would mean more to me than the stipend. I agree that, you know, acknowledging that farmers are professionals and compensating is it's appreciated. It's not why I say yes. You know, it's not a big money. It's not a revenue stream for my farm, but knowing what happened would be really wonderful if we could get researchers to, you know, at the end, think back to all the people who were involved and just, you know, send them a complimentary copy and let them know that you were part of this and this is what we found.
Very good suggestion.
I wanted to say also that, you know, like you, we are most interested to participate in projects when it's a question that we are interested in. So we're looking for that same sort of match. And one really great experience I had that I still think about is we have an organic dairy researcher here whose name is Brad Hines, and we've done quite a few things with Brad. But at one point he came down, he's sort of in west central Minnesota. He came down to southeast Minnesota and said, I don't really interact with dairy farmers in that part of the state often enough, organic dairy farmers. And he put together a listening session. And many of us will go anywhere for a snack or for food. So I think this was like a late morning lunch. He bought us lunch or something like that. And he invited organic dairy producers from all over the area to come and he kind of treated it like a focus group, a very informal focus group. And I think the benefit of that was so he could listen in to the farmers talking to each other about things, because he'd ask a question and somebody would weigh in and somebody else would say, well, I don't know, do you think if a guy did this or did that? And so then Brad could just sort of sit back and listen to who had been exploring what and who was interested in what and how many people were dealing with the same issue. And so I think that can be a really fruitful way, is to get farmers together and just kind of eavesdrop on us.
I was going to piggyback on something, but I want to make sure Liz has opportunity too to chime in. But just to piggyback on what Meg was talking about, in Missouri, there was a very successful, it wasn't organic, but it was extremely successful collaboration between grazing, forage researchers, beef producers, and at one of our outstate research centers in Missouri. So in north central Missouri, we had a grazing research farm. And a lot of the early work in the 1990s around grazing dairies and grazing herds were oriented to two researchers who went to the monthly get-togethers the farmers had. They had a horizontal peer-to-peer learning group, a grazing cluster, and they would meet every month and a member's farm and talk about what they're doing. And people would ask them, well, why are you doing that? Why don't you do this? Oh, I never thought of that. And all of these things. And the researchers would just be there and they're like, oh, there are some researchable questions that we can actually give some concrete data. And it was a very, very successful collaboration. And kudos to those researchers. Like, I don't do enough of that. I mean, that's every month. I do try to go, like I said, I go to the market a lot. And so I hear a lot of things, but I think it's really behooves researchers to be out with farmers and listening in. And that's where you can really see where your interests can connect.
I just want to chime in and say that I agree with all of that. And I have over the years received calls and requests to participate in research projects that I declined because I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It has absolutely zero to do with anything that I am doing on a very diversified, certified organic vegetable farm. So yeah.
And I don't know that Liz said this during her introduction, but one of the reasons I think, Liz, you have such successful collaborations with researchers too, is that you were actually trained as a researcher before you started farming.
That's true. Yes, I did not mention that. That's very true. But it helps, it helps. The researcher, you don't have to work with someone that has experience, but you have to be aware of and willing to do some educating, do some training, do some explaining to the farmer that you're working with. so that they fully understand the repercussions of what they're going to be doing, and definitely clearly outlining the expectations of what the researcher needs to happen from the farm and from the farmer.
This is all such great fodder for future. Oh, go ahead, Meg.
Yeah, before we go on, can I go back to something
Yes.
Kerry said, talked about, which was some of the just institutional and bureaucratic struggles of getting research questions to line up with RFPs at the right time. And that, you know, sometimes it's great to have a pool of questions that are going in the back of your head and stables of researchers or farmer cooperators you could reach out to. But also, I would recommend, if you're looking at doing an investigation and you're casting around for participants, look at the type of on-farm research farmers have done themselves. Like, go to the SARE databases. Mary talked about the SARE program. Go to the SARE databases and take a look at project reports and find out what farmers and what regions have been investigating those questions. OFRF has many years of farmer-led research and farmers exploring research questions. A lot of states like Minnesota have programs for farmers to do on-farm research grants or demonstrations. So just looking at what they're doing not only casts a light on some research questions and the importance of the research questions or the universality of those research questions, but may also lead you to making some connections and saying, you know, I would be flattered if, you know, somebody had read about my project and called and said, you know, hey, I'm a researcher at NDSU and next door, and I read your study and I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about how you did things, and maybe from there a relationship would develop. But that's another source of data, if you would, about you know, research questions on farms.
Yeah, another comment, and I agree. The SARE database is incredibly useful, and not only for you know, people to connect, but also for people to get their own answers, their own questions answered. And if you are somebody who has a lot of questions that are more not questions that you could just Google and get the answers for, but you want a deeper understanding of cause and effect, you should not be afraid to contact your local university and talk to their researchers and see if they're interested in these questions and if they're interested in you as a collaborator. I'm the student that when I went to graduate school, my advisor asked me if, you know, how something was going. I said, I don't know, I'm not sure I understand this. And he says, well, did you ask the professor? And I was like, oh my God, talk to the professor? Are you kidding me? And you know, he was like, no, don't be scared. It's fine. They'll talk to you. And I did. And it's like, well, yeah, they're just people. So don't be afraid to talk to a university that's in your state. And most of the Corn Belt and the Northeast do have either organic or sustainable agricultural researchers that you can find via Google, and just invite them to a meeting that you're having, or, you know, just try to make some connections with them, because there's a lot of farmers out there. It's harder for them to meet you than it is for you to meet them, probably.
This is such great advice and insights and ideas. I'm really excited to hear them. I did want to take it all the way back. Kerry had mentioned before about compensation, about fair compensation, and I'm really curious about how this has been handled in your projects in the past. And this can include like time, use of land, as well as actual money. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what those kind of fair arrangements have looked like for you all in the past.
We usually just, if we're basically just using somebody's land, and maybe they have to prepare the land or something, but they're not doing much else, we usually go with $1,000. But if they're having to be a little bit more involved, we'll just go for 2,000. And we tend to not necessarily negotiate it with the farmer, but because we have to write into the grant like a year before, you know, we even do it. So I don't think I've ever paid anybody less than 2,000 a season.
That's pretty great. I've never made that much, even close.
Oh, you should be asking for more. And then we have on the honorariums, like when Mary goes to Liz's farm or something, we kind of have, we usually, like, for an hour of your time, it might be $200 or something like that. But I mean, we like average land rent in Missouri is a couple $100 an acre. So we want to make it worth people's while and you're also having to replace lost production too. Because usually whatever we're doing is not going to maybe end up in their cells. So, but yeah, Liz, you should be asking for more.
Well, and so I just am finishing a project where I did participatory research, but it was more me requesting farmers time for an interview. And I think we gave $50 gift cards. 75, I think, would probably be about a little bit more appropriate now. But if we ask for an interview where it's going to take like 60 minutes, I mean, people should get paid for that. And so I think that, at SARE, we pay for farmers to review grants and things like that. And we pay an hourly rate, which I don't know what it is. But, at this point in time, farmers should be getting, if you're going to be a consultant, you're going to be $50 an hour at a minimum. Right. And so farmers should really think about that. But researchers should really think about, well, that's an important aspect. And just for the farmers out there, researchers have this other set of hurdles with our university, right? And there's quite a few different kinds of hurdles about funding. So for instance, I know this sounds atrocious, but my university will ask for about 50% added on for costs just for the university to say for managing the grant. Well, that's a lot for social scientists. That's kind of outrageous because we're not using labs and we're not using those kinds of things. But even for like on-farm research people, they're not using as much of the university facilities. But if it's a $400,000 grant, that actual cost, it's going to be a $600,000 grant by the time the university gets done with it because of the indirect costs that are associated and that the university has to pay. And we are absolutely required. They will not let us submit a grant without capturing the indirect costs. So I just think that that's an important thing for farmers and nonprofits to understand that there is that component of the research from the university perspective. On the other hand, there are some protections built in. So I have to comply with research ethics because so I have to submit my questionnaires and so on to make sure that they will be an ethical research project. So there are some things that the university is protecting. So it's not just all, oh my God, the university is just doing all this stuff. We have data protection policies, data management policies. So there are things that are important there, but it's just, to understand that that's something that we have to negotiate within our university. And it sounds I know it sounds atrocious to farmers and community groups.
Mary, I see a question that makes me realize that maybe not everybody knows what SARE is, and we've mentioned it a couple times.
Yeah, it's the North Central Regional Sustainable Ag Research and Education Project, which is what Meg and I were referring to in the North Central region. But every region of the country has one of these. There's the Northeast region, the Southeast, and the West. And it is SARE.org. So we talk about it as SARE. So it's another kind of like a partner organization to OFRF, doing some similar things, but it's I think SARE is more connected with USDA.
And it funds university-led research as well as on-farm research.
Yes.
Different programs. So if that's not something that people that are based in the US here are familiar with, that might be worth investigating. It's exciting to see how many people from overseas have joined us. I was noticing that in the chat as well.
And unfortunately, Mark, NEFA does allow for indirect costs. They cap them, but yes, they allow for indirect costs.
Great. I just didn't know, Meg or Liz, if you wanted to add anything to this question about fair compensation and what that's looked like for you all. And Liz, now we know you need more, but
I would say I will advocate stronger for myself, but most of the time when I am approached and asked about participating, I'm not given the choice. I'm not given the option. I'm told we will provide you with X. So maybe now I'll say, well, that's not enough. So if you
You'll
want my
counter
participation, you need to
offer.
ask for more. Maybe.
Or start a bidding war.
Well, doesn't it also depend a little bit, Liz, on like, is this research actually going to help me in the long run? This could be
Yes.
really important. And then, you know, the compensation. But if it's research that you're just sort of ho-hum about, maybe it's not. I mean, then, you know, farmers are like, I really need to get paid for this because I'm not convinced it's going to help me in the future.
Right.
I'm also taking acres because I'm doing row crops or livestock, and maybe they're not taking acres from you, Liz.
Well, that's true, but it's probably not taking any less time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, is that I think there's on-farm research and then there's with farmer research. You know, sometimes people just want to come and use something on my farm and observe or measure, and it really does not cost me any time, you know, except for allowing them access. And I think that's very different than if I am engaged in data collection or planning or whatever it might be. Then, you know, I think that I've earned more, as opposed to, you know, if some students want to come out and count birds in my pasture, that's fine. You know,
Yes, totally. I mean, that is
It's fun
exactly
coming
what I was going to say. I had a graduate student that was studying carbon monoxide, I think, or something. I can't even remember. It was years ago. And she just came out to the farm and set up some measuring stations, and she would just text me and say, hey, I'm coming out. I'm going to be there for an hour. But it just required nothing from me. I don't need anything for that. But many of the projects that I have participated in, I was actively engaged in field prep, planting, data collection, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a huge difference, you know, between those two scenarios.
Absolutely.
no, this is super helpful. Oh, go ahead, Kerry. Did you just go off mute?
No, I was just going to say, it looks like people are using the chat for questions instead of the question and answer, but
No, that's great. That's totally fine. Use whichever is easiest for you in the chat box or the Q&A. We do have some good ones in there. And I just wanted to mention Jane Subi made a nice comment about including growers so that they can put their compensation line item in that budget if you happen to be working with them from start to finish. So that's a great idea. I did want to have kind of a question for farmers that are like as a bigger picture for you all. So I'm interested to our two farmers, how research has impacted your operation or your outlook on organic farming.
while they're thinking, can I throw in a comment? We
I would love it.
often find that we're following the farmers, that we see the farmers doing something, and for it to be promoted by a university, we have to have quantitative research proving it works or doesn't work. And so a lot of times, the farmers are ahead of the researchers.
And I would say, as farmers, that's flattering to hear that sometimes we're ahead of the curve and you want to do that. But in terms of the research and the on-farm research, I think to many of us, on-farm research is credible in a way that station-based research isn't. And by that, I mean small plot research, very highly managed research that would go on at a research center or a research station. Because we look and say, well, you know, those researchers can control all the variables. They have all the equipment. They have all the help. Sure, they can make it work on their farms in those little plots, but we could never do that out here. So that researching and demonstrating things at field scale, if possible, gets credibility from the farmer community. Now, it's not what you need for academic journals, so we're thinking about the different audiences here. But if you are focused on improvements in agriculture and looking at adoption, and if that's what really floats your boat as a farmer and or a researcher, or maybe I should say a researcher and or a farmer, then I think it's really important to navigate some of these struggles and the inconveniences of having to do stuff on farm in large scale, far away, with a sometimes unreliable cooperator. And because I think that at the end of the day, that's where adoption comes from.
You muted.
You just muted.
Sorry. There was a question in the chat asking if we could, under show captions, if each of us could, under show captions, change your speaking language, if you could change it to Spanish. Someone was asking if we could have the captions be in Spanish. Maybe there's a Spanish speaker on the call. And if you just go to your show captions at the bottom of the screen and you change your thing to, I think, I've never done this before.
I'm on it.
I think you can do that.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you for that, Liz.
I don't know. These updates will be better. Let me think.
I just turned my captions on.
Yeah.
And there's another comment. Oh, I better another. What's this?
Yeah, we'll try to see if it works. Hopefully it does.
So I'm not sure who this is, but somebody answered and they said that they don't think that there's a way to do captions. I really don't know anything about Zoom. I just know that somebody was asking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can try to add it in the video and to put it in the chat to that extent. Great. Any other thoughts?
That big question you asked about the future of the world and why we're engaged in what this means for our farms. And I think it's I think a lot of it for me just comes from personal satisfaction. I don't necessarily have an ulterior motive. I'm curious. And I think, as I said before, I'm most eager to participate in research that as asking questions that I also have that I would like answered. For me, fly control is a huge challenge for organic dairy farmers in general, organic livestock farmers. Pest control is a huge issue. And so that was a very tangible thing to say, well, is this a technology that we could adopt, that farmers like me, that I could do on my own farm, but also other farmers like me, and I could contribute to the success of other operations. And that just gives you kind of a little quiet thrill, thinking that you're part of something that might make farming more sustainable for some other operations. I don't think I have anything more deep or introspective than that. Maybe Liz does.
Yeah.
Mary, ask me the question again so I can.
So I'm just curious how having research done at your farm has impacted your operation or outlook on organic farming. Sort of that bigger picture, if it has had any impact engaging in this on your farm.
Well, I mean, I would totally agree with Meg. Like, I haven't ever seen any results, any papers written, any final anything about any of the research that I've ever participated in. Honestly, I mean, really, truly, honestly, no, not that much. Like the most impactful and the most beneficial and meaningful to me was the interactions that I've had with Mary's students. When I've gone and talked to her classes, when the classes have come out and visited the farm, that was absolutely by far more meaningful to me and more impactful on me and the farm. I mean, one of her students came and worked for me. I mean, but actually, the results of the sweet potato research, the results of the, although interesting, not that impactful for me.
I will say that I am really gratified that there is organic research being
absolutely
done. Like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, nobody was looking at these questions. And, for my money, research in organic systems can benefit all farmers, but research in conventional systems often does not benefit us. So I think of organic research as far more basic than research into conventional systems, and I I've seen that definitely with what's gone on with soils and the explosion of interest in soil health over the past 5 or 10 years. And I think that largely has come out of organic experiences and looking at what happens when you nurture and feed and cultivate your soil. Well, not cultivate mechanically, but, emotionally cultivate your soils. And I think that's being widely adopted by conventional dairy farmers now. We're seeing the same thing in organic mastitis control, and the fact that a lot of antibiotics are losing their effectiveness for mastitis control in dairy systems. And so they're turning and saying, well, what is it that organic farmers are using? And how does that farm have a 200 somatic cell count and they're organic? How is that possible? Looking at that. So I really think that's another drum to beat, that our the research and the findings that we are finding, the results that we're finding are broadly applicable and can benefit so much more than just the organic sector.
Thank you for that, Meg. Yeah. I do want to get to, we are about 5 minutes out from our hour together, and I did have one question from the chat that I think might be of interest for most, and then we're gonna give some final kind of thoughts, if that's okay for our panelists. Our question was, for researchers and producers, do you always have a data sharing agreement before you have any on-farm research at your farms?
Liz has done more of this than I have. Do you, Liz?
Oh, you're on mute.
Wait.
You're good. Nope.
Back. Now I'm back. I'm so sorry. I was answering a question from one of my employees, and asked me again. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. Do you have a data sharing agreement?
That's a good example. The farm comes first.
Yes. Do you have engage in a data sharing agreement before you have any on-farm research at your farm?
I've never had anybody ask me for that.
Okay.
No.
Yep.
No.
We
Did you ask me that, Mary, and I forgot?
No,
No.
but I have to, like, the data that I collect is usually like through interviews, and I have to maintain confidentiality. So, but I do compile it, and I'm getting ready to send out a report to everybody that collaborated with me on my most recent research. I just don't have the editing done on the report, but I will send that out. And I usually haven't sent out the actual paper, but I think I will do that. I've always shared reports. I've always shared, well, this is what everybody else said. Like, I'll send out descriptive things from a survey or something like that. But I kind of like the idea of sharing the actual article too.
When I to pay the on-farm collaborator, I have a consulting agreement which says they'll share the data collected on the farm with me, but it doesn't say I'll share the data I collect with them. So I realize, after this webinar, that's probably an issue. And there have been times when I haven't shared data with farmers, and it's largely because it was a failure and I didn't even publish. Like I said, the cows broke the fence and the grazing study was ruined and things like that. But on other times, like I've done the between row mowing research, and we didn't share data, but we gave them a between row mower that we developed from the research. So, so I think sometimes maybe the research is not successful and the researcher maybe doesn't really have anything to share, and then sometimes they should be sharing with you.
But and I would say anybody on this call, even if you can't publish something went wrong and it was a bust, let us know, because it makes us feel better about our own failures. To know that smart PhD people, run into problems also. Makes us feel a little better about our own work.
Oh, I love that.
I did conventional research for 20 years and then 10 years of organic, and organic was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
The other,
so we get some nods here.
Mary, I was also going to say that I think what we were hearing from Meg and Liz about the impact of research, I do think that the farmers experiment and do things differently than researchers, and they also have different end goals for the data and knowledge that comes out, right? And I think that this is really kind of an important point for researchers to really understand that farmers are going to use the information. Like, they may not actually use the data that you collected, but they might use the tools or the new way of thinking or something else, but they may put it in their operation in such a different way. It's totally not, the researcher doesn't really recognize, because the goal of the knowledge is totally different. That it's to maintain a farm, it's to make money on the farmer side. On the researcher side, it's really to understand this larger process. And I do think that that knowledge then does flow, right? It kind of comes flowing back through extension sometimes, or it or farmers are sharing something that they learned from the experiment, even though it's not what you thought, right? So I do think that knowledge flows in lots of ways we don't really understand.
I love that. And that's such a great kind of thought to sort of close out our hour. I would love if Meg, Kerry, Liz, if you had just maybe one or two quick 10 seconds before we end our time together. But I just love that as a thought, Mary. Thank you for sharing that, kind of how this information really, it does have different meaning, right, for different people, and that flows in different ways. But I would love just a second from each of you to kind of close out your thought if you'd like. And if that is a tip or final takeaway, go ahead and do it.
My
final takeaway.
Go ahead,
Go ahead, Meg.
Go ahead.
I just was going to say, I think that is 100% right. I mean, we're thinking about things differently, and we have different goals, end goals, different perspectives, but we're probably going to take something away from it. So I think that's great, Mary.
And my tip is to be persistent. We often get distracted by the day-to-day things that are happening on the farm, and sometimes we need little nudges and gentle reminders. And so don't hesitate to do that if you're working with a farmer. If you call us and we don't call you back, try a different method. It's not that we don't want to talk to you. It might just be that we're not picking up voicemails or not reading chats or something like that. So be persistent with us and just understand that sometimes we need a nudge.
And plan in advance and include farmers with your work.
Wonderful. Well, thanks everyone. Kerry, I don't want to leave you out in case you have any final tips. No. All right. Amazing. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. This was so wonderful. I know I learned so much, especially to please share what you've gotten from your research with the farmers that you worked with, as a big underline. But thanks so much. We appreciate it. Thanks to all of our speakers for spending this time. And we hope to see you at a next event. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.